The Philadelphia Eagles 2024 season starts with a bang, a 34-29 shootout win in Brazil over the Green Bay Packers. The recap coming up right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. It's the post-game show. Louis DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri. 34-29, the Eagles take it in week one in Brazil over a great Green Bay Packers team. A shootout win. It was stressful, Gino, down to the wire, but this was a fun kind of stressful. Like, shootout wins are incredible. They've won shootouts against the Green Bay Packers before. And to me, seeing this offense, yes, there were some growing pains in the beginning. A lot of undisciplined football. Looked like the 2023 Eagles. Jalen Hurts at times looked like Carson Wentz today. But in the end, they were clutch. And you saw the potential. You saw the ceiling of a Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith-led offense. And when they were tuning, like when they were in a fine-tuned unit today, they looked elite, almost historic with how well they were moving the football.
I said to you before we jumped onto these airwaves that if you've been an Eagles fan since the end of Andy Reid's tenure, we have been living in a perpetual state of the same opening game being played year after year after year after year, where the Eagles just look miserable for the first quarter and probably most of the second quarter. And then all of a sudden there's moments when they just look electric, Lou. And the defense, we have to give them their flowers right off the bat. The defense won you that football game, bar none. But what the offense did, Lou, in those moments of brilliance, the first touchdown to Saquon Barkley, where you motion Jahan Dotson to the formation, and then he runs an orbit motion across the formation. You have a tight end leak on the backside, and you have Saquon Barkley run a wheel route, which we have been saying is going to happen. And he did exactly that with one of the better throws you're ever going to see Jalen Hurts make. Put it in an absolute basket. That throw to A.J. Brown, Lou, I mean, you couldn't have gift-wrapped that ball any better and put it on a platter for A.J. But Jalen Hurts, bro, take a breath after today, man. Like, just relax, my friend.
There was a lot of bad with this offense today, despite the 34-point performance. But I want to spin it into a good, because like you said, when Jalen was on his game today, those were 2022 MVP-like ball placement throws. The A.J. Brown touchdown, the Saquon Barkley touchdown, that 3rd and 8 with the blitz, getting hit, throws it to DeVonta Smith, that final drive, multiple third down conversions to DeVonta and to Saquon Barkley. When Jalen was on his game today, he looked elite. Even that final run in the fourth quarter where he breaks 2 tackles, carries a guy over the chains to move the chains, and eventually get the game-winning field goal. Like, Jalen was elite. But at the same time, there were the low lows of the 2023 season that peaked up again. But when those moments did arise, Gino, they didn't collapse like they did last year. And to me, that's a really good sign. Okay, here, because we've been saying all summer, what happens when that first, adversity hits? Mm-hmm. Will they collapse like they did last year? Or will they overcome it? And they overcame it today. And that's normally what this core does. So although Jalen needs to at times stop playing like Carson Wentz and forcing throws into the end zone and double coverage across his body when you're up by 5 in such a late game against a great team, absolutely, he needs to cut that out. Like, 2 picks today again, inexcusable. He also dropped that snap that could have put the game on ice with a quarterback sneak touchdown. But I want to spin that in a positive way because they overcame that. And last year at the end, they were not able to overcome those flaws on and off the field.
That was the thing about early on in the 2023 season. And it's so hard not to look back because those first 2 drives, I'm saying, Lou, you guys talked all off season about how you didn't want to think about 2023. And the first thing that you do as an offense is exactly what you did in 2023.
It was an egregious start. The first 6 plays of the game were a disaster.
It was horrendous. And I mean, we should have seen it coming with Saquon, his first touch, he slips out of the gate and then we're like, oh, here we go. It's not
that
going
was
to
giving
be
me
the
Super Bowl 57
thing.
vibes. Like, this field was an absolute disaster. Both teams were slipping. Like, nobody could stay on their feet, by the way.
I want to give a huge shout out though to, yes, Jalen Hurts had his moments of brilliance, and Saquon Barkley was on another freaking planet. And the run blocking tonight at times was just exceptional. That first rushing touchdown from Saquon, they parted the Red Sea. AJ and DeVonta doing what they do. But Kellen Moore, do you smell that, folks? Do you smell the breath of fresh air, what it is to have somebody that uses creativity on offense to manipulate defenses?
The first half, 70% of their plays were pre-snap motion plays. Like, that Saquon Barkley touchdown was only one of many that were just, we're going to break them down this week. But there was that third down conversion to DeVonta Smith where Shipley's playing wide receiver on the right. Saquon's in the backfield. He's called in motion. It opens up DeVonta in the slot. There was a quarterback draw where they used motion. Linebackers left the middle of the field. It opened things up for Hurts. Kellen Moore, like, that is exactly what the offense, the highs today were why you brought in Kellen Moore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there were the plays, like the 3rd and short and 4th and short where, hey, we just need our guy to hit a slant, win off the line, catch the football. And they did exactly that. But those moments when you needed scheme to help elevate the talent around them, that's exactly what Kellen Moore gave them tonight. It was so beautiful, Lou, because even a team like Green Bay, I thought their secondary played exceptional throughout most of the game, man. And they did a really good job of taking away most of the stuff downfield for the Eagles. But Jalen Hurts, when he gets back to sit in the pocket and he just relaxes and just goes through his progressions, he sees the field so well.
He was seeing it very well. He had a great pocket feel. Like, outside of those 3 plays, Gino, I mean, 20 of 34, 278 and 2 touchdowns. And then again against the blitz, like, I thought Hurts had a great game outside of a couple crazy bad plays.
Mm-hmm. No, I would absolutely agree too. And if you were going to look at both of these quarterbacks, people were trying to sell us on Jordan Love. Like,
Hurts outplayed Love for sure.
I mean, the Eagles defense held Jordan Love to around 50% completion.
Yeah, only 17 of 34 today.
That's really good from that
but a lot of them were just guys slipping, and Jaden Reed had
Reed's a freak, man.
Huge plays. Like, 4 for 138 today for Jaden Reed and a touchdown.
He's an absolute freak, and that's what we were saying all last week at Locked On Eagles, was that somebody in this Green Bay receiving core is going to be open at some point, because you can't cover them. And even when they had great coverage, Lou. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell played out of his mind. I thought
we'll get into Q.
Darius Slay, he had the ball thrown his way one time all night, I think. And outside of that, like, you had the big play to Reed that was Reed Blankenship didn't carry him to
Gino, most of Love's
Johnson.
Plays were just breakdowns because the field was terrible and guys couldn't tackle, which we will get into. But yeah, I think Jalen Hurts outplayed Jordan Love. But the story is Saquon Barkley. Like, even though
the freaking ball, man,
the expectations were high, right, coming in, and we both believed that he would get back to who he was the first few years in New York. But I didn't think he was going to look like Penn State rookie year giant Saquon Barkley. 24 carries for 109 yards today, 2 touchdowns, also had 23 yards through the air. So he had 3 touchdowns, actually, because he had 1 receiving as well. A beautiful wheel route on the left sidelines. I mean, that is, like, me and you both are anti-invest a lot in running back kind of guys. But we both said you pay a player like Saquon Barkley for a game like today. There's only a few guys that can do what he did tonight.
You don't win that game if you have DeAndre Swift. You don't win that game if you have Miles Sanders. You don't win that game if you have Josh freaking Adams carrying the ball. And all of the people, and I'm shouting out some of these Locked On Network hosts, primarily Peter Bukowski, who says he's just a fine running back. He's more than a running back.
And look at that touchdown catch, Gino. Like, the way he got both feet down, that's a receiver type of play. That's who you pay. That's an offensive weapon. That's not a running back.
Thank you. That is not a guy that is just a running back that just carries the ball 35 times a game. The respect you had to put on him every time he's on the field, Lou. And there was one point when I'm tweeting from the Locked On Eagles account, I'm like, why is Kenny Gainwell on the field at all? And no disrespect to Kenny, the next play after he had a run that got stuffed short, he picks up a first down on a nice little screen. Saquon Barkley is just exactly as advertised. He's so good. You cannot not give him the football. And you paid him for 3 years because that's the window, man. Like, you give him the ball.
He looks like he has his legs
anytime.
back. He looked explosive.
Stop running the tush push. Just give the ball to Saquon Barkley and let him go, man.
And, I will say, Cam Jurgens, of course, that muffed punt, or I should say snap, in the first half that gave the Packers the ball in Eagles territory inside the 20 was bad. But I thought Jurgens and Becton, those were the two guys we said we were kind of worried about in this matchup. They really got going because the run game got into a rhythm. And I thought they both played really well in the second half. And this team, yes, in a Kellen Moore offense, they threw the ball 34 times. They're going to run through Jalen Hurts, DeVonta Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. They're going to pass the ball a lot. But they're a different unit when they can hum like that running the ball. It really gets the offensive line going, and it makes the team multiple. This was the exact formula. This was the ceiling of the offense. Remove those bonehead 3 to 4 plays. You saw what this offense's ceiling was tonight, and I'm so glad we got to see that right off the jump.
If you're going to turn the ball over as many times as you did, one of them was in the red zone. You had a fumble turned over, so you had
two of them were actually. Both the first 2 turnovers were in the red zone.
Yeah, you lost the turnover differential by far. It wasn't even close, and you still were able to put up 34 points. If that's the floor,
that's one, and you haven't played all preseason. That's the most incredible part. None of these guys have played at all.
No, Jahan Dotson didn't touch the ball tonight, Lou.
That's why, and you're playing a really good, the Green Bay Packers are a really good football team, in my opinion. They're not going away.
We couldn't pick who was going to win that game because of the way it played out tonight, because you knew that these teams were going to go back and forth, and it really came down to who made the last stop.
And we didn't even get to talk about the receivers. A.J. Brown, 5 for 119 today and a touchdown, averaged 23.8 yards per catch.
Dude, what?
That touchdown was amazing. And I know Jair Alexander is an incredible corner, but if you're putting A.J. Brown on an island one-on-one, you're an insane defensive coordinator. That's a recipe for disaster. But I will say, DeVonta Smith, the numbers, 7 catches for 84, doesn't look super sexy. But I thought DeVonta was their most reliable player on offense that wasn't named Saquon Barkley. The clutch plays he made in the fourth quarter today, you saw it in the playoffs the last 2 years. Outside of Jalen Hurts, this might be your most clutch player. DeVonta really stepped up.
And we're, of course, going to talk about the defense, and I think they deserve to be talked
get into
about
it second, too.
right?
Yeah, we got a lot of time.
They sing second in this one. DeVonta Smith was never not the guy. He was never not the choice. He was always that player after he wins a national championship game for the Alabama Crimson Tide in his freshman season. Man, has this kid ever why has anybody ever doubted him?
He weighs 170 pounds. And
he weighs your size, Lou.
And he's breaking 2 tackles on 3rd and 8 with the game on the line, getting the first down. I love DeVonta Smith. I'm sorry. I'm so glad he's
smart. He has great hands. He's reliable. For somebody his size, he's fearless. A.J. Brown is John Robinson. What were you thinking, man? You got to be sitting back every time that guy scores a touchdown for the Philadelphia Eagles.
It was the perfect game for this offense, removing Jalen's plays. This was the exact stat line you want. 5 catches for A.J. Brown, 119 yards and a touchdown, 7 for 84 for Smith, 109 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns for Saquon. You could not have scripted a better box score for this offense to start things off this year.
Dallas Goedert made some very good plays for you.
4 for 31 and probably should have been more involved.
And Grant Calcaterra, he was called upon to make a play. Kenny Gainwell made some plays in the pass game as well. Both of them moved the
chains on a drive, yeah, for sure.
We talked about who were going to be those role players, Lou. I think they found some guys tonight that if you need 1 or 2 plays for you, outside of your big guys, you can make those plays.
And Dotson didn't even get going yet.
That's what I'm saying. You're only going to incorporate Dallas Goedert more. You're only going to incorporate Jahan Dotson more. And you're not going to go against a secondary like Green Bay that has as many young athletic pieces that can keep up. I mean, Eric Stokes, he played a really good game. The ball was not thrown at all. And Jair Alexander is still really good. But when the Eagles were able to do what they wanted to do, Lou, and they were able to settle into the run game, and they were able to use this under center play action where things got open down the field, just let Jalen Hurts sit in the pocket, give the defense time to get off the field, because in that first quarter, Lou, they were on the field essentially the entire time, and they won you the game, man. Like, I'm so proud of Vic Fangio and that defense tonight. I think anybody that grew up on this Eagles team, they want us to get into this defense.
Let's get into the defense coming up next. The Eagles take it 34-29 over the Green Bay Packers to start things off 1-0 for the 2024 season. This is the Locked On Eagles postgame show. (34-29) the final score. The Eagles start things off the way they normally do. 1-0, a shootout win in Brazil, but they did it the way they normally do, Gino.
Sirianni's 4-0, right?
Sirianni's 4-0 week one, but he did it in stressful fashion, as we're used to as well.
Yep.
And Gino, like the offense, again, as we mentioned, 34 points. Jalen Hurts, DeVonta Smith, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, they were so clutch in that second half. That box score, they showed the ceiling. Kellen Moore, a ton of creative plays that I can't wait to go back and rewatch. But this defense, like, I know it says the Packers had 29 points. You know, Jordan Love had 260 yards and 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs averaged 5.2 yards a carry, 84 yards. This is kind of a game where numbers lie, though. The grass was terrible for this defense. Like, it was very hard to stay on their feet. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was in and out of the lineup. I think this defense actually had a phenomenal game and kept this offense in it when they were playing like garbage the first half. I mean, Gino, how many clutch red zone stops do they have where they forced a field goal attempt? That Reed Blankenship interception was so timely in the second half. The secondary was great outside of Avonte Maddox. I think, again, there's some things you can nitpick, like the defensive line, the pass rush didn't look great. But for 3 quarters, they had neutralized Josh Jacobs, and they had kept this passing game in check. So I'm very happy with the way this defense looked, considering how young they are. It's a brand new, complicated scheme. The field sucked, and they were playing a really good football team. Like, I'm over the moon with how this defense debuted the season.
I think the first 2 drives, when they were really hit with adversity, man, they responded exactly the way you wanted your defense to respond, right? It's like, man, the offense set us up twice in terrible positions, and you walked away with only allowing 6 points. You could have been down 14-0 in the blink of an eye.
They would have lost the game.
It would have been a much different conversation, Lou. And I love that they put the graphic up on the screen that this was the first game since the 2014 Jacksonville opener that the Eagles had back-to-back turnovers on their first 2 possessions, and the defense bailed them out, Lou. And it wasn't they needed to make a play every single drive, even though they made a lot of plays when they needed to. They made 1 key turnover. Reed Blankenship shot out of a rocket ship as a backside poach.
And that was a hard interception. Like, the ball got tipped by the receiver. He's falling down.
Dude, how it hits the ground, that ball comes out 9 times out of 10 on most guys trying, especially defensive
by the way,
back.
2 sacks for Zack Baun, both timely, including the final sack of the day. I thought the linebackers, the coverage wasn't great. We knew that was a weakness going in. But Nakobe Dean, have a day. I mean, the linebackers, Dean and Baun looked really good.
Dean in coverage, of course, did not look great. That's a whole different discussion.
We knew that was going to be a problem.
But against the run, one of the main concerns for the Eagles down the stretch last year was who were the guys that are plugging the A and B gap. Nakobe Dean it wasn't a run, but that instinctual screen where he undercuts the offensive lineman. It wasn't Sheldon Brown.
That's Georgia Nakobe Dean.
But that's the type of plays that you need from your playmakers, the guys that are going to bring energy, bring the juice when, hey, maybe you're not getting the sacks, Lou. Maybe you're not getting the interceptions. The plays like Quinyon Mitchell jumping and breaking up multiple passes. Those are the plays that you need. You had to feel like a proud father.
Can we talk about Quinyon Mitchell today? I thought he was spectacular. And I was very surprised that they put him on the outside with Avonte Maddox in the slot. I thought today would have had Ringo on the boundary with Quinyon inside and nickel. And again, Maddox, I thought, was one of the rare, few bad players on defense tonight. But Mitchell made some really great plays. There were 2 pass breakups I jumped out of my seat for. A couple great red zone coverage snaps. Quinyon and Darius Slay, they were on lockdown. The only guy that had success for the Packers and a deep receiving core was Jaden Reed, and that was over the middle of the field against Maddox.
You figured it out. You know the archetype that you need on the outside corner. You need somebody who just has smooth hips that can just get in and out of his breaks.
The way he knew exactly what route was coming. He closes in perfectly. He makes a great play on the ball. I mean, you'd think Quinyon's been playing for 5 years the way he played tonight.
Jalen Mills and him, like, no way those guys played the same position. There's no way. Because Quinyon Mitchell, the way he moves in the open field, I see why you wanted to target him. I don't care where he played in college, what scheme he played in. That's the type of player you bring into your building. We talked about him at the Senior Bowl, his ability to go down there and play up a level. Now he comes into a huge environment tonight against the Green Bay Packers receiving corps, which could have absolutely decimated you
that
more
first
than it
pass
already
breakup,
did.
the first pass breakup and that streak by Christian Watson on the left sideline in the first quarter.
Perfect. Stayed in phase
It
right
was
on his
perfect.
hip, got to the ball exactly how you want to see it covered.
Yeah.
That play when, who was it to? Was that Dontavian Wicks?
Yeah, it was Wicks.
He's basically in a zone turn where his hips are kind of facing towards the quarterback, and then he reads that it's an out route. So he has to kind of flip his hips and get into a man turn, and he undercuts the ball and plays his hands through the. But that's teach tape type of stuff that you're going to watch on film tomorrow and say, this kid's a rookie. That exceptional, man. Like, exceptional type of stuff. Zack Baun, like 14 tackles, 2 sacks, get him after the quarterback and plug gaps. Like, he was so good, man.
Gino, use the linebackers like the way that they do things, like, positively. I think
Lou?
They both come downhill so well. Just put them in positions to thrive in that way, but don't put them in precarious positions where it's third and long and Nakobe Dean has to cover Tucker Kraft one-on-one, because that's when things were getting bad. That's when you bring out Cooper DeJean in dime looks, which they did today a lot, and I was very pleased to see that. I didn't know if Fangio was going to trust Cooper early on this year. Just get those guys, like, let them maximize their strengths and just don't put them in positions of weakness where, like, you can't have Zack Baun in space, but those two showed, like, if they're coming downhill against the run and as rushers, they're very good players.
I thought there was one play that people were probably like, why is Zack Baun like dipping out of this play? It was a screen pass to the edge, and I believe Quinyon was to the right of him. So Quinyon, he's covering the sideline, and then Zack Baun like kind of dips under this so Reed Blankenship could fill the alley. Basically, what Zack Baun was doing was being that force type of player to force things inside, just using his body and his leverage. He's not the quickest, he's not the fastest, but in football, like, if you get to a point before somebody else, that can make up for the lack of speed. And look at Zack Baun, dude, like 14 tackles, 2 sacks. Nakobe Dean and him should be the only guys on the field at that position, even when Devin White comes back. And the one area where I'm saying it might not show up in the stat sheet because you didn't have a ton of sacks, but late in that game, Lou, what Jalen Carter was doing on the interior of the defensive line was sickening, dude.
And I will give a shout out to Jordan Davis too. I thought, again, Josh Jacobs really did get going the second half of the third quarter, the fourth quarter as well. But for 2.5 quarters, Jordan Davis and that run defense had Jacobs doing almost nothing, where he had like 19 yards. So I thought Jordan Davis had a good game too. Milton Williams made some nice plays in the backfield. He stopped that 2-point conversion, which was clutch, because if the Packers got that, then it's a 3-point game at the end, which changes everything. So Milton Williams made a low-key, really important play. The edge rushers, I'll say I was a little underwhelmed with, but I want to save my criticism because the conditions were so terrible today that I want to see what happens next week against Atlanta for Josh Sweat, Bryce Huff, Nolan Smith, Brandon Graham. But I will say that's the one area of this unit that I said I need to see more, especially from Bryce Huff. Sweat did have a couple nice wins today, one-on-one. I got to see more from Bryce Huff, though.
I thought the interior played exceptionally.
I'm very happy with. And Moro Ojomo had a huge pressure on Jordan Love in the red zone to force a field goal attempt, by the way.
Yeah,
so
they have a really good
nice
rotation.
Play too.
I thought Jordan Davis's highlight of the day was in the red zone. It might have been that second turnover, and it's a 3rd and short situation, and he's getting double teamed, and he does not move at all. And the one guy vacates the double team. He sheds that block, gets off the block. The backer and him, they fill the gap, and they take down, I believe it was Josh Jacobs, short of that first down line. Those are the type of plays that you're going to need him to make, man. Like those 3rd and short situations, 4th and short, when you need 2 guys to be occupied by 1 and not move off that spot. That's why you draft a unicorn like Jordan Davis. So the guys behind him, Nakobe and Zack Baun, the way that they played, they can continue to play the way that they played. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he had an up and down night. I need to see.
He's hurt.
I think there's something. He was holding his
up.
chest at some point, like one point.
He wasn't
the
same after that Kraft hit, in my opinion. So
Reed Blankenship, exceptional ball player, exceptional.
Yeah, he made me eat some crow tonight. Not gonna lie, that pick was clutch. He made some really nice tackles in the open field.
The Jaden Reed play where he didn't carry him to.
But again, that's not his strong suit. Like he shouldn't be covering Jaden Reed one-on-one. Anyway. Exactly. But overall, like again, Gino, considering the circumstances, I think today was a win for the defense.
I'd say one guy had some up and down moments, and that was Avonte, and it's like how
Maddox was bad, I thought, for the majority of it.
The Christian Watson thing, I think, is a little unfair. It's like the guy's 6'4", and you're putting a guy 5'8" on him. Like that's pretty much insane. But outside of that, man, like he still has a tough assignment being that nickel type of corner.
I want to see more DeJean though and Ringo next week.
I do too. We'll
see what happens with Roger. Gino, what does happen? Like Rodgers comes back. How do you remove Quinyon from the outside though?
You can't. No. He's playing every single play. He's playing every single play. Like
I don't want him in the slot though either. He looked so good on the boundary.
But what if teams do to you what the Eagles did with AJ Brown, and all of a sudden good receiver is in the slot? Like it'll be a lot. Green Bay is such a unique situation because they have like how in hockey they say like you don't have a number one line, but they have 4 second lines. Like that's exactly what they have in the receiver game. Like they had 6 guys that were going to beat you, and that's a tough assignment. But man, like you held Tucker Kraft in check, and Luke Musgrave didn't get much play at all. And for the most part, you held Josh Jacobs in check until that last quarter. And Jordan Love
I think the numbers lie a little bit with this game.
Yeah,
for the Packers.
There were some drives where if you're looking at it, you're like, Green Bay really didn't put together like any like substantial play. It was like the Eagles shot themselves in the foot with a dumb penalty. Jalen Carter
or Zack Baun, like Chauncey missed a tackle. Yeah,
exactly.
I think that was most of the game. And same with the offense. It was, Jalen Hurts threw another hospital ball over the middle in double coverage when he didn't need to. So I'm very encouraged by this win. It's against a really good team. You're traveling to another continent. You haven't played all preseason. You overcame the obstacles that last year killed you. I think this win is a massive win for the long term. 34-29 the final score. Our final takeaways coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles postgame show. Week 1 ends in a win for the Philadelphia Eagles, as it really always has, at least for the Locked On Eagles podcast. We have only seen one loss in our time running the pod in the season opener, and this one was a fun one. 34-29, a back-and-forth game between two of the best young teams in the NFC. So, Gino, we talked a lot about both the offense and the defense. Overall, like, what is your biggest take? I mean, there's so many, but what's like the one main thing you're taking away from this game that you'll apply for the rest of the season?
Looking back to last year, week 1, we were still having question marks about the coordinators. And those questions continued to linger on well through the season. I don't think there's questions about these coordinators, man. I think they got these hires 100%
I think they
correct.
crushed this.
Vic Fangio, he did some fun things with that defense, man. Presented some fun looks where you're popping multiple guys up, popping multiple guys out, throwing multiple different combinations. Who's on the line? Like Thomas Booker got some play tonight in a rotation. But Kellen Moore, like, man, those Boise State years did him some well, scheming up some plays, brother.
Surprise. It elevated what the Eagles already did well. Like, there was a QB draw, and it was only a 6 or 7 yard gain. But when you saw Shipley roll from the right to the left, it cleared a linebacker out of the middle of the field, and that created space for Jalen to pick up more yards than he probably would have. Like it's not just that Kellen Moore did so many different things tonight than what the Eagles have done, which is true, but he also elevated what you already do really, really well.
It was a great compliment, honestly. And I think totally Vic Fangio did a really good job of that as well, right? Because if you look at what the Eagles do well, it's that interior pressure. Like we're gonna run the game through them. And I think both of those guys did a really good job. If I'm going to like nitpick some things in terms of the team, like stop shooting yourself in the foot on both sides of the ball.
Yeah,
like,
for me, it's Jalen. I'm getting nervous about the aggression that he's developing, and sometimes it's the wrong spots. Normally, he's good at picking and choosing his spots. That's like if I had to come up with like a big worry about this game, it's, oh no, please don't start developing Carson Wentz like habits. You know, like that's my thing. Because that's what he was doing today at times.
That I think is teachable. The running with him, I think, is a concern. Like the draw game, like I don't know what.
Slow. I don't know if it was a
slow
field
to react,
thing or
and
if the Packers were just on top of it.
Some of the reads were a little bit sketchy to me, but going back and watching the tape,
I want to hope it's
a little bit interesting.
But yeah, I saw the same thing, so I agree.
With him, if you get the tape and you don't even mention 22-23, and you just say, Jalen, I'm going to show you 2 plays. You're Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you that throw when you threw it across your body into the end zone, and then I'm going to show you the Saquon Barkley throw. What did you do here, Jalen? What did you do in this situation on that Saquon throw? You were calm. You understood the read. You understood that it had to develop. It was going to take some time. You didn't rush it. You didn't push the pace too much. But in the end, why did you need to push the pace there? Like, that should be a teachable moment. Like, hey, we know how good you are, Jalen. You don't need to prove to anybody. You're not a kid down trying to compete for what is that, like the QB 11 Trent Dilfer school, like the top high school guys. Like, no, dude, you're an NFL quarterback. Like, you're trying to live to see another day. That's what you need to do. Just calm down, relax. Jalen Carter, don't take some of those stupid penalties. Like, they'll figure it out, man. I think those first game jitters, they're there. It's never easy, fun, or pretty in week 1 for the Eagles, man. Like we said it leading up to this game that it's been every single game. I mean, go back to the Redskin game that we were mentioning that they lost, where Carson Wentz all of a sudden was looking like the next coming of sliced bread, and then all of a sudden he throws multiple interceptions in the second half. So take week 1 with a grain of salt, but a lot of the positives, I think, were messages and lessons that you could take away from 2023 that you have already corrected.
That's my takeaway. I think it's that they overcame the obstacles that last year killed them. And they did it in a really tough situation against a really good team. You haven't played much this summer, if at all. You didn't play in the preseason at all when it comes to your starting offense, especially.
Another great point. Like, none of those guys played together at all until this moment.
It's a shootout. It's a back and forth game. I think this was a really good first game. Like, it's a great first test that you passed.
Better than New England last year.
I totally agree. And the other thing, Gino, is like this win's important because next week it's not easy. You play the Atlanta Falcons on primetime football. That's a really good roster. And now that you have that first win, it takes, I don't want to say it takes the pressure off, but like, this was an important game. You needed to start things off. And if you would have lost because of a lot of the same things that killed you last year, suddenly that can start getting in Jalen's head. It can start getting in the rest of this team's head. It was very important for just the vibes of this football team, this locker room, that they won and overcame what they were facing today.
And that was the difference between 2022 and 2023, right? It was like they faced adversity in 2022. They were just able to overcome it. And that's exactly what you have to get back into. Like, hey, guys, like, we held the ball for 7 minutes in the fourth quarter. Like, we did everything we wanted to at the end of the game, except score that touchdown. But when we played to the level that we know we can, and we settle in and just do the things that they do well, play to their strengths, that's what you saw tonight. The coordinators came in, elevated those strengths. A lot of the guys that were playing together, I thought, complemented each other beautifully, man. Like the play between Nakobe Dean and Zack Baun, seeing those two guys who never took linebacker snaps in a regular season game. I don't think Devin White's having
a job to come back to.
Yeah, I mean, Zack Baun never played interior backer in his entire career. This was not an easy game in the grand scheme. Like you said, this game could be huge when it comes down to seeding, and I'm still taking Jalen Hurts in these big moments. Like, as chaotic as he is, like, until he proves us otherwise, like, the kid is good. And Saquon, as advertised, folks.
I can't believe the Eagles have Saquon Barkley. 34-29, the final score. The Eagles take it over the Green Bay Packers. 1-0 to start the year. Gino and I will be back next Monday through Friday to get you ready for the Falcons matchup, as well as recap this game for a couple days. Still a lot to talk about. Stock up, stock down, and more. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.